So welcome to our latest We Treat Feet webinar. Thanks for joining us. I know that time for all of you is really precious, and that's why I'm really grateful for all of you that are joining us tonight. Remember, this is an interactive session, so if you have any questions or comments, please use the chat box and we'll reply as soon as we can, and we'll work our way through them throughout the session. But this week, I'm joined by someone who I've long regarded as an inspiration and a mentor for me. He's a pioneer in podiatry and orthosis therapy, the founder of Firefly International Foot and Ankle Clinics and Firefly Orthosis Lab. That's Mr. Martin Magoo. Now, Martin, our Irish heritage is very close to my heart, but I think I'll have to remember to talk slowly and keep my accent as anglified as I possibly can so that the listeners and the watchers can understand what I'm saying. So I'll try not to get carried away. There's a real risk that my cadence will get faster and faster as I start speaking to a fellow Irishman. But just to introduce, for those of you who don't know, Martin was born in Belfast and he qualified in 1989 from the Northern Ireland School of Chiropody and Podiatry. He then relocated to Rossnever in County Leitrim on the beautiful shores of Loch Melvin 19 years ago. And from there, he established Firefly Orthosis Lab, which is a small enterprise from the spare room of his house, which went on to serve the UK and Irish public's podiatric profession since 2003. And since then, Firefly now spans a number of nations. It has grown from strength to strength. And many people here will have at least heard of Firefly or been lucky enough to meet some of the Fireflies at a conference. And if you have, you'll know that his team are some of the most fun-filled and brightest stars within the industry, and they absolutely radiate positivity. And that has to be in some part down to his influence and his ability to build that culture within his business. Now, Martin's primary motive for relocating to rural Ireland was to move towards a better work-life balance. And having spoken to Martin for the last 6 or 7 years on a personal and professional basis, I feel confident when I say that he has definitely mastered his work-life balance. I might be wrong, but that's certainly the impression that I have. And perhaps that's something we can all use some guidance with from time to time as business owners. We can all be guilty of pouring all of our energy into our businesses rather than taking some time to provide some self-care now and again. Now, Martin, I've been looking forward to talking to you for the last couple of weeks. And I know your chosen subject is one that's fascinating for me and one I've always been intrigued by, but I've never really fully understood it. So, Martin, if you wouldn't mind, just explain to us what the Enneagram philosophy is and what it is about that you find so interesting.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Hi, Kieran. Thanks for the invite. Yeah, the Enneagram is essentially a personality tool. And, you know, in any work that we undertake, the tools that we use make that job easy or difficult. So even if you think about it in the context of, say, gardening, do you have the right tools? You know, an MSK practice, do you have the right tools? You know, treating the at-risk foot, do you have the right tools? Even now with COVID-19, we think about PPE, you know, do we have the right equipment? And what interests me about the Enneagram, it's one of many personality tools that you can use as a personal self-development, self-awareness tool. And over the last maybe 30 years, I've been involved with lots of different tools, you know, Myers-Briggs tests, the Big Five, various different ones. And what struck me about the Enneagram, and I was introduced to it in 2016, was that it allows you to understand yourself when you're healthy, when you're average, and when you're unhealthy. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's a really powerful tool because all of us have moments when we're incredibly brilliant human beings. And all of us have moments when we're kind of average and other times when we're simply dreadful. Mm-hmm. And if you can understand your dominant sort of paradigm and how you live in the world, it really helps you to be the better version of yourself. So from that perspective, that sliding scale from healthy to unhealthy has been really invaluable to me. It's also been really invaluable in terms of my family. So my wife, my 3 children, and then my extended family, my brother, my sister, and then all of the employees in Firefly. So it's a fascinating concept. And for those that have never heard of it before, it originates from the ancient Greeks, or Egyptians, sorry. And over the years, it's been refined. And there's essentially 9, numbered 1 to 9 personality types. And they're numbered to make them non-gender specific. And each of us are a little bit of all 9, but we're all predominantly 1, and that's where it varies. So maybe if I mention them very quickly, number 1 is the perfectionist. Number 2 is the helper. Number 3 is the achiever, the producer. Number 4 is the individual. Number 5 is the investigator. Number 6 is the troubleshooter. Number 7 is the enthusiast, the entertainer. Number 8 is the challenger. And number 9 is the peacekeeper. So all of those dominant personality types, when you're healthy, you're just an incredible person. Doesn't matter which number you are. But again, when you become average and unhealthy, you start to behave in certain patterns that are quite recognizable. So that's a quick summary of it.
Mm-hmm. You've often talked about the number 7, and that you've seen that, well, you told me that I was a 7. I didn't even know what you were talking about. That's, to be quite honest. And you kept talking about me being a 7 for a few months, really, before I knew what you were kind of getting at. I just thought you were a crazy person that had allocated numbers to people.
Well, I suppose that the key thing is that it's a tool, so you sometimes have to take it with a pinch of salt. You have to use it carefully. But I really dug deep on this, and I recognize the 7 because I'm a 7. And the 7 is the entertainer, the enthusiast. Mm-hmm. And there's characteristics of my personality that I saw in you. Mm-hmm. And not only when we met at conferences, but also even in terms of, say, how you represent your company, The Foot Medic, on Instagram. Mm-hmm. So there's certain ways of communicating that you suddenly go, I think Kieran might just be a 7 too. And, I think when your colleague and associate Martin came to visit Firefly and visited our lab and clinics and in the little run pod shop, we were having a discussion about it, and he was fascinated in it as well. And, he went off to do the little test and to read all the descriptions. And, Martin came out as a 9, and he was just like, wow, that's actually how I behave. And at the time, I think I said, I kind of think Kieran might be a 7 like me. Of course, one of the challenges is it's really more about me understanding me not trying to guess your number, but it is helpful if you understand, the people around you and what their dominant personality type is, and then how they behave. Yeah. Very, very beneficial.
And that was the one thing that
So the 7, let me tell you about the 7. Do you want me to tell you more about the 7 then? Which is personal to you and I, so the viewers can look on. 7s are typically visionary in terms of umbrella view. They look down and they see everything. They put all the pieces together very quickly, and they can create a vision of what things look like in the future. So 7s are always kind of moving towards something else. And part of that is that they're actually moving away from something. And that's really moving away from painful scenarios, memories, something that happened in their childhood, which they couldn't influence. Mm-hmm. So what they did was they turned and they played with their toys and they entertained themselves. And here we go, for the rest of our lives, we're going to entertain ourselves. And we're going to be sort of future orientated. The negative to that is that at times then we become somewhat scattered. Mm-hmm. Because we see so much opportunity that we want to jump on to the next thing, and we want to do this and we want to do that. And as an example, within Firefly, we've worked with the Firefly team now know that Martin is likely to be the idea man, but he's never going to finish all those projects. Mm-hmm. So once you know that you have all these ideas, you have to then start saying, okay, what am I going to say no to? What am I going to let go? Or what am I going to start and then create a team around me who are actually going to finish it? Mm-hmm. So it's fascinating. Yeah. The other thing about the 7 is that we're always cracking jokes. We want to make everything lighthearted.
Yeah.
I mean, I actually thought about the Hosier song where he talked about his girlfriend laughs at a funeral.
Funeral, yeah.
I said, she's a 7. She's a 7.
Yeah.
Right. That's, we don't want to take, because that's a painful scenario. So what we want to do is make it lighthearted. We want to move on to something else. So, there's so many examples of that in my own sort of family life and business life where, as an example, we were the victim of a pretty significant bank internet fraud.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife's a 6, the troubleshooter. Mm-hmm. And the troubleshooter will look for things that can go wrong and point them out. But when they become slightly unhealthy, they become anxious. Mm-hmm. And the glass becomes half empty rather than half full. Mm-hmm. And somebody like me is the 7. I'm always, the glass is half full.
Yeah.
And when that event happened and a significant amount of money was taken from the company, and of course it's not credit card fraud, so the banks, they won't stand over it. Money's gone. For me, the number 7 is, right, seek a solution. And also reframe it into something positive. What do we learn from this? Mm-hmm. Whereas the number 6, the worst thing that could go wrong just did go wrong. Yeah. They can't even get out of bed. So it's a really, and when we were aware of our personality profiles and observed how we behave, we were able to say, oh my goodness, look at the way you reacted, look at the way I reacted. And that's really kind of that's a valuable tool in terms of your personal relationships, but also in terms of your business relationships.
Whenever I read a wee bit about the 7, I suppose maybe in the same way that Martin McCafferty had reacted, I thought I was reading about myself. Everything that I read was totally a reflection of how I had perceived. But it took me to read around that concept. And then after reading it, I actually was far more forgiven for my own behavior, because I could understand that that's why I do that, rather than be frustrated to be that way.
Yes.
Once I knew that was why I was behaving the way I was. And it's exactly what you said. It was the next shiny new thing. What's the next investment? What's the next investment? What's the next idea? How can we do it better? And that's actually unbelievably tiring for the people that are coming in your wake if they don't necessarily understand that that's how you are hardwired.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It can be a massive cause of frustration for a team of staff, because they get annoyed with you for moving in that direction or moving at that pace, particularly if they have trouble keeping up.
Yeah, without a doubt. And once people become aware of that, and if your team now go, right, we understand that Kieran is 7, and when he gets excited, it is the next shiny new thing. And he's going to bomb on to the next project because he's constantly moving forward. Now, it is interesting, the Enneagram can be quite complex. And I've bought numerous books and really studied it. And some of the books will take a religious perspective, and the Jesuits developed their own sort of Enneagram concept. Some of them are business orientated. Some of them are community orientated. So, choose your book. But it's fascinating that, let's say the number 7, there's what's known as arrows, and there's a stress arrow and there's a growth arrow. So the number 7, when you are in a growth phase, which means you're really healthy, you actually move towards a healthy number 5. The healthy number 5 is the investigator. The investigator quite likes their own company. They're the people that will really do the research. You ask them a question and they give you so much information back, it's like, wow. And the number 7, when they're healthy, is more like that. Mm-hmm. So I will come to this place down in Rossinver here in County Leitrim, spend time by myself. I will digest the information that I want to, and then make a decision. Conversely, when the 7 is stressed, again, you and I, we move towards a 1. And the 1 is the perfectionist. So as we get stressed, we start wanting everybody to do everything in a perfect way. It's like, just get it done and do it properly. And once you become aware of that, you can start saying, I'm now slipping. I'm getting stressed here, and I'm now demanding perfection of myself and of people around me. And sometimes then that can move to being critical and judgmental. So again, that's quite intriguing. The other thing that's exciting about it is that on that number 1 to 9, which is a circle, so starting at 9 is at the top. So the peacekeeper overviews the entire Enneagram, and then it goes clockwise 1 right through to 9. So again, we're 7s. We move towards the 8. So we're heading in that direction. The 8 is known as the challenger. So the 8, when they're healthy, are the charismatic leader. That's what you and I would like to be. We want to be that charismatic leader. But the 8, when unhealthy, can be the bully. And everybody knows the challenger. Someone in your life that just rubs you up the wrong way every time. They can't say something without just winding you up. That's the challenger. So we tend to move towards that next number. So if that was, let's go, let's say you're a 5, you'll move towards a 6. If you're 7, you'll move towards the 8. Conversely, you're moving away from a number. So let's think about us. We're moving away from the 6. The 6 is the troubleshooter. The 6 is the person that is going to tell us there's wild animals over there. There's, don't go that direction, there's quicksand. But you and I don't necessarily want to hear all that because we're always solution orientated. We want to make things work. So when the 6s tell us the glass is only half full, we want to move away from it. So that's known as your shadow. And it's really interesting when my wife's a 6 and I'm the 7, you can think of the dynamic there. So there are scenarios where I think my wife's raining on my parade. So the thing is to acknowledge that shadow and to say, actually, there's a part of that 6 that I need to listen to. I need to acknowledge it because I'm so keen to bounce on to the next thing that I don't see the iceberg. Let's say the captain on the Titanic had have been a number 6, the ship never would have sank.
Yeah.
It was probably a 7 captain that just said, plow on.
Yeah.
Keep those engines going.
Full steam. So
it's very good to have someone who can point out to you, there's an iceberg there and, that actually might be pretty big. Another example would be that we were successful recently in tendering for the UK military ORTHOTIC project budget. And we were working on that tender, that proposal. And I suddenly found out that my key financial person was a number 1. I also found out that my key HR person who was creating the tender was a number 1. They're both the perfectionists. Who do you want creating the plan and creating the financial models for the military and the banks? You want perfectionists. And the perfectionists, again, can drive us crazy because they want to dot the I's, cross the T's, but we want to keep moving too fast.
Yeah.
But once I recognized, the right people are dealing with this project, they delivered it and we won that contract. And I've no doubt that was down to the people who created the actual plan and delivered it. You and I have the visionary oversight to say, we're actually going to go for the tender. This is how we're going to do it. But then we need people who can actually put that plan in place. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. So you kind of answered my next question already, because what I was going to ask was, we're predominantly a 7, 6, or whatever the number might be, but you will either leave one number and work towards another. So what I'd said was, can you kind of ride the line? So I suppose in a way you can, but you'll have a trait, you'll have a dominant trait.
Correct. Yeah, and the thing to remember is that you are a little bit of all 9 numbers. So there will be times that you will exhibit characteristics of the other 8 numbers. So let's say we're a 7. There'll be times you're the 2, you're the helper. There'll be times that you are the 9, you are the, that's the concept. Because some people, when they start to explore the Enneagram, they find it difficult to, what number am I? And of course, you can do various free tests on the internet to establish that. And my advice would be to do the test 2 or 3 times, because sometimes when we answer these questions, we answer them as we would like to be, rather than who we really truly are. So you have to answer these questions with real authenticity and integrity. And I think when I first did it, it was showing me as a 3 or a 7, and the 3 is that the achiever, the producer. But I met an Enneagram master instructor, and within about 10 minutes of being with me, they just said, no, without a doubt, you're a 7. And then they were able to show me why. And now I know, having read a lot of the books, I am. There's no question I am a 7.
Yeah.
As the dominant personality profile.
It really helps us understand other people a wee bit better and ourselves a lot better. But without, I think it's probably very easy to think that it's a pigeonholing system. And it's not as simple as that. It's a guide.
Yeah, it's just a tool. Remember, it's a tool, and it's how you use it. So, some people have said to me, I don't like being put in a box. Don't put me in a box and say I am the following, and it's very much up to how you approach it and how you study it and what you can take from it. Interestingly, it's the number 5 who tends to say that the most, which is the investigator. And they go deep, deep, deep on subjective matter,
So it's definitely had a positive impact on your life, and the little introduction that I've had has already had an impact on mine. So it's something that anybody in the position of running a business or being responsible for a team of people, do you think it's something that it's worthwhile at least having some overview of and having some insight to? You think that would help?
I think it's really, really very good. And as I say, I've looked at various models along the way. And this to me is the most versatile and the most usable. And it can be very effective in working with patients, because there are certain characteristics of patients that become really clear to you when you're in a consultation, and you can then decide how to respond. So it's certainly very beneficial, but it requires a little bit of work. Nothing's easy. You have to study it, you have to practice it, you have to understand, particularly yourself. I mean, that's the biggest thing. It's about self-awareness, self-knowledge, self-improvement. And that's the thing that strikes me the most. But in terms of my family dynamic, my business dynamic, it's been very, very good. So I recommend it anyway.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's helped in my home life and helped in my work life insofar as that I understand myself better. I think I do need to get the team to either watch this or do some investigating themselves. I think they would understand me better if they had some of the same insight that I'd been given.
Okay.
Before I let you go, we mentioned in your intro that Firefly was a company that spanned many nations, and I know that you've been working on a massive project in the Middle East. I wonder, are you able to throw any more light on what you've been doing behind the scenes so far afield?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Firefly is predominantly serving the podiatric profession in the UK and Ireland. But probably just over 12 months ago, I was invited to visit Islamabad in Pakistan. And a colleague from the UK who was born in Pakistan but trained within the UK as a podiatrist, working between London and Birmingham, had connections in Pakistan. And she had gone to Pakistan and worked in Shifa International Hospital and had set up an at-risk foot clinic. And the diabetologists, the endocrinologists, the medics were just quite in awe of her wound care skills and her ability to save people's feet and ankles and lower legs. And she was able to reduce the rate of amputation. She also was starting to introduce MSK concepts, orthotic therapy, offloading concepts in Pakistan. And she approached me because of the MSK background that I have. And we had been working on a digital design app in terms of 3D scanning of the foot and ankle, and then linking that to software to design custom-made foot orthoses using sustainable plant-based 3D printed material. So we went to Pakistan initially with the view how do we set up clinics to serve, I suppose, I'm going to say wealthy individuals. But when we were there, we suddenly realized is that, look, this is not what we really need to be doing. We need to think about how we change the nation's foot health. There are no schools of podiatric medicine anywhere in the Middle East. So the MENA area, that's Middle East, North Africa. And one of the big things that drives me is not only my business and what I do in that field, but also how we promote podiatric medicine. Podiatric medicine has been wonderful to me and to my family and all my colleagues in Firefly. So we're always promoting it, and you'll notice that I'm using the term podiatric medicine rather than podiatry. And part of that is that podiatric medicine is now part of the Royal College of Physicians and Surgeons in Glasgow. And, you've got medics and surgeons, you've got dentists, and you've got podiatric medicine and travel medicine. The Royal College has made a decision to admit podiatric medicine because they see it as one of the key professions for the future, and particularly in terms of the Middle East with the epidemic of diabetes. So with all of that in mind, I came back and said, look, the bigger issue here is not about setting up individual clinics like we have in Ireland. We actually need to bring the profession to Pakistan. How do we set up the first school? And we've been working on that with a team of people that I've created around me. And again, it's interesting that Enneagram mix of who's on that team, because it all works well when you've got the right mix. Or it'll work well as long as everybody's healthy, but as humans, we're always sliding. So what we've done now is we are in discussions to open a college in Islamabad, and that would be the first college of podiatric medicine. But another interesting opportunity has now presented in Pakistan and also in India, in that they are asking us to look at creating a 2-year subspecialty fellowship program for medics. So in the same way as medics specializing in surgery or some rheumatology, whatever, there'll be a module that will be a 2-year master's equivalent fellowship program in podiatric medicine. And what we want to look at is how do we create a scenario that those medics and that qualification can be recognized in the UK, South Africa, Australia, and how does it relate to the USA model? So we're in discussions with various bodies and people in those jurisdictions, and we have submitted a curriculum, and we're in the process of negotiating that with the Pakistan Medical Council. The challenge is, of course, COVID-19 now, and the developing countries are just overwhelmed at the moment. So that's something that will evolve in time, and so it's a concept that we'll discuss again and again. But again, think about what it does for our profession, and think about the opportunities that it gives for that country, train the trainer, to treat their own population and to reduce the amount of lower limb amputations. And Pakistan leads the world in lower limb amputations. Mm-hmm. So I think that's an example of what we can do at a pretty significant level.
That's fantastic. That's a whole new level, and that's not even
absolutely.
That's definitely that's not even your core business. That's a totally new. I wouldn't say it's philanthropic, but it's a totally new enterprise, isn't it?
It is, but I mean, of course, what comes down the line, Kieran, is the potential for commercial opportunities. And that's there because we've spent quite a lot of money just investing in it to this date. So, at some point we would like to recoup that money. But the primary motive here is change the nation's foot health, and to do that with podiatric medicine. Yeah. And I truly believe we can do that because, again, so many of our colleagues are highly trained in wound care. And it's just crying out for it. So Middle East, North Africa, so India, we have a group talking to us about this as well. And we also had a connection from the World Health Organization in Egypt saying if you can create a 2-year fellowship module, then it takes podiatric medicine and puts it into medicine in a way that they understand. So the challenge is that for years we've all tried to be like, we want to be recognized by medicine, we want to be part of medicine. So what this really means is now that we're actually straight in through a route that they've created for us. Part of the discussion also is that once you get doctors qualifying with a subspecialty fellowship in podiatric medicine, then the rest of medicine recognizes it. The concept would be to set up maybe schools that would be similar to dentistry, 4 or 5 year degree program that you would qualify straight as a podiatric specialism. So that's another discussion. So, but again, think of the number 7 here. Look at all the things I'm presenting you. Mm-hmm. It's one thing after another. So that's why you need to have the team around you who say, okay, we're going to let that one go. This is the one we're focusing on. You do this, I'll do this, and they keep you true, keep you honest. Yeah. Or we just keep going, Kieran.
But I can see how what you're talking about is a world-scale elevation of this profession, and maybe that's something that we've there has been. Let's face it, there's been a massive evolution, seismic evolution in podiatry in the last 10 years, and it's going in the right direction. As I said, maybe not quick enough.
Absolutely. And I think the secret is to get groups of us together that inspire each other, help each other. And, the ultimate end game is that you help patients, you help other citizens. And that's the secret. If you can keep focused on that, then everything else follows. But sometimes it's hard to do it alone. And, traditionally podiatry at times, sometimes you can be isolated and you could be in your private practice somewhere or in a department where you're somewhat lost. So it's a question of how do you find the mentors? How do you find that tribe that goes, you know what? You're a podiatric medical professional. And what you do is, has massive value. Mm-hmm. And, you forge on with that.
Yeah, and our gains will be much greater if we have those positive conversations, positive debates. They can be healthy. It doesn't have to be an agreement, but from a place of positivity, and we can start to move forward.
Yeah, and I think when you talk about conversations, I think conversations at times you have to sometimes say, let's. You may not agree with what I'm saying right now, but let's just stay with me. Let's have the conversation. And you enter a terrain sometimes for which you don't have the language. Yeah. And that's the incredible thing. And what happens when you find yourself in a position where you actually don't have the language to traverse the terrain? Mm-hmm. And we find ourselves in that emotionally all of the time. And that's where the Enneagram can help you to do that. And also your tribe that keep you going.
It's been really insightful and a really, really exciting project for you.
Yeah, it is. It's very exciting.
We're going to coming up on the end of our kind of allotted time, and there was something you dropped something in very sort of quickly in one of the statements you made, and talking about what was happening in Islamabad, and it was something about plant-based, renewable.
Yeah, sustainable plant-based, 3D printed, custom-made food orthoses. Yes.
So is this a new? This is a new concept.
Yeah, this is a new thing that really over the last 2 years, my focus has been to look at sustainability, and I know traditionally food orthoses are made from polypropylenes, carbon fibers, different types of man-made materials, usually petrochemical type materials. Now I know they're not single use because these things last for multiple years. And that's fantastic. But at the same time, is there something we can do in terms of technology that makes how we serve our patient more sustainable? And in the last 12 months, we've invested in our own software to create really unique shapes. And from that, we have linked then to new 3D printing technology. And we've now sourced sustainable plant-based materials. So we have a range of foot orthoses that are sustainable and plant-based, which is like, wow. So really excited about that. That's just really being launched as we speak. So it's pretty new. Not that many people know about it, certainly in Ireland and the UK, but that will hopefully replace polypropylene, co-poly, that type of material, and indeed even the carbon fibers. Our next big thing is to move towards pathology precise orthoses, where we design very unique orthoses to offload certain structures. So let's say, for instance, you have a synovitis of the second metatarsophalangeal joint. Can we design a product that is custom made to the anatomy of that person's foot and is specifically designed to offload that second met head? And so we're working on that type of product, rather than thinking about, well, should it be a 2 degrees or a 3 degrees rotation on the rear foot or the forefoot? All of that sort of concept that confuses people. How do we say, okay, here's the product, and orthotic devices, Kieran, are essentially load modifiers. They modify load. So the different designs, the different features create different modifications of load. That's all it is. So how do we use software and then this new technology, 3D printing, to improve all of that? So that's exciting. And I hope that it simplifies the approach that we take as podiatrists to creating the prescription, because that still remains a challenge depending on which school of podiatric medicine you actually qualified from. So there's so many different paradigms, so many different concepts that it gets confusing, certainly for young podiatrists. So we're looking to maybe make a dent in that.
Yeah, I think one of the questions that you've asked me if I've ever had a query about a prescription, and you might remember, what are you trying to achieve? What is it you're trying to do with the device?
Yeah.
And I think in all of the theories,
that's the key thing. I mean, yeah. What are you trying to offload? And certain things. What's the diagnosis? Use our skills, our autonomous profession to arrive at a diagnosis, or at least a differential diagnosis. Okay, this is likely to be one of the two other, this or that. And okay, do I need further investigations? Do I need to refer off to surgery? Do I need to refer for steroid injection? Can I treat this with offloading therapy? What do we need to do with exercise prescription? What do we need to do with motivating that person in terms of their strength and flexibility? What do we need to do about footwear advice? Because all of those modify the load. Change the shoe, modifies the load. Get more flexible, modifies the load. Get stronger, particularly in the proximal core and hips, modifies the load at the foot and ankle. So all of that, they're all load modifying components, and certainly even over-the-counter products modify the size with the custom-made and more accurate.
But what you're describing there, between what else can I do to modify the load, or what else can I investigate, whether it's medical imaging, whether it's analytical blood tests, or
correct.
What you're describing there is podiatric medicine. It's foot and ankle medicine. So that's kind of...
Yes, it's absolutely, and it's interesting for, again, maybe young podiatrists are listening to this, who knows, all two of them out there. But what you might find, my daughter is in first year in Glasgow, and I was over talking to some of her friends, and they heard me saying this podiatric medicine, and they went, "Why do you keep calling it podiatric medicine?" And I said, "Because that's what it is." And I said, "So the next time somebody says to you, 'What are you studying?' What are you going to say?" "I'm studying podiatric medicine." It changes the mindset, and it brings me way back to 1989, Kieran, when I qualified, and I spent time in the United States. I spent several months there and came back with the notion of becoming a podiatric surgeon. And I was one of the first people in Northern Ireland to use the term podiatrist. And I put that on a little business card. It was chiropodist stroke podiatrist. And I said, and have said to this day, nobody knew what a podiatrist was, but it gave me the ability to create my own definition. This is what I do. I specialize in podiatric biomechanics and orthotic therapy. My interest is in sports medicine and orthopedics. Say that at the party.
Yeah.
So to the young podiatrists nowadays, you're qualifying in podiatric medicine. Now create your definition.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm a wound care specialist. I've studied podiatric medicine.
Yeah.
And the list goes on.
Don't wait for someone else to elevate your profession. Start elevating it yourself.
Yes.
Well, you took us right back.
Individual responsibility, eh?
You took us right back to 1989 in a fantastically professional
wow.
setting. You brought us right back to the introduction. It's kind of brings
31 years ago, you know. So it's been a long time focusing on the foot and ankle.
It's been absolutely fantastic having a chat, and hopefully people will take at least something away, whether it's about their number and the Enneagrams, or whether it's something about where we are as a profession and how we all have a responsibility to move it forward in a positive manner. But it's been really good. I'm very, very grateful for you taking the time to speak this. If anybody needs to find out a wee bit more about what Martin does, or a wee bit more about what the company does behind it, you can find them at fireflyorthosis.com, right, Martin?
I think it's just firefly.ie. So www.firefly.ie.
There you go.
I think, yeah. Well, you'll find Firefly Labs, you know, you'll find it. And my email is martin@firefly.ie. So if anyone has any questions, or, you know, please don't hesitate to send me a message and I will reply. And thank you all for your time. And thanks, Kieran. I enjoyed it.
So did I. Absolutely fantastic. Thanks very much. Take care, everybody.
Okay.
And we'll see you as soon as we can. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.